The clock indicates the end of the workday, signaling that it's time for employees to wrap up and prepare to leave. Kim Se-ho, a dedicated non-regular employee at Jinseong Trading Company, remains seated at his desk, fully immersed in the tasks displayed on his computer screen. While others begin to pack their belongings and tidy up their desks, Se-ho continues to work with focused determination, seemingly unfazed by the growing activity around him. As chairs scrape against the floor and colleagues engage in light conversations, the atmosphere in the room shifts to one of anticipation for the evening ahead. Suddenly, the sound of a sharp clap grabs everyone's attention, causing heads to turn toward the source. Standing at the center of the room is Manager Jean, a familiar and lively figure known for his upbeat personality. With a wide smile and a confident stance, he calls for the group's attention. True to his reputation for fostering camaraderie, Manager Jean enthusiastically invites the team to join him for dinner. Just as he often does, Manager Jean now invites all employees to go hiking at Pungak Mountain to strengthen the bonds of friendship within the team. He enthusiastically announces that he will personally serve everyone chicken soup during the outing. Some employees respond with polite applause, though deep down, they are not entirely on board with the idea. However, they feel unable to decline the invitation from their manager. Meanwhile, a few employees subtly make their objections known by quickly finding excuses to leave the room, their hurried movements silently signaling their unwillingness to join Manager Jin's planned activity. Manager Jean notices that the room has suddenly emptied. He wonders why there seems to be no sense of togetherness among the employees. However, Se-ho remains seated at his desk, fully immersed in his work. Intrigued, Manager Jean calls out to Se-ho, deciding to personally pitch his hiking plan to him once more. Se-ho, still focused on his tasks, listens briefly before politely declining the offer. He explains that he has a significant workload piling up this week and cannot spare the time. Undeterred, Manager Jean persists, telling Se-ho that if anyone will recognize his dedication to the company, it will be him as the manager. Hearing that, Se-ho pauses his work and smiles at Manager Jean. He reassures him that all of his tasks are due next week and that he is simply staying ahead of his deadlines. However, Manager Jean chuckles and remarks that someone as young as Se-ho shouldn't be burdened by frustrating responsibilities. He adds that Se-ho's work contract is about to be renewed, and as the manager, it will pass through his hands. Playfully yet pointedly, Manager Jean suggests that any misstep from Se-ho might jeopardize his career. Despite this, Manager Jean reassures him not to worry too much, as the invitation to Pungak Mountain is not intended to be a farewell party. Se-ho continues to feel a sense of worry, though he remains quiet. His silence, however, is interpreted by Manager Jean as agreement to join the hiking trip. Manager Jean, noticing Se-ho's lack of response, assumes that Se-ho may not have any friends, which he believes is why Se-ho stays late at the office and working well into Friday nights. With this assumption, Manager Jean presses on, directing Se-ho to finish his work and leave the office. Se-ho, understanding the request, nods politely and responds with a brief expression of gratitude for the effort that Manager Jean has put into his plans. His tone is calm and respectful, though it's clear that Se-ho's mind is elsewhere, still preoccupied with his own concerns. Despite the manager's persistence, Se-ho remains focused on completing his tasks, aware of the underlying pressure to comply with the expectations placed on him. The following day, Manager Jean and Se-ho set off for their hiking trip to Pungak Mountain. The journey takes them through the serene landscape, where they eventually stop to rest at a small pavilion. They are served warm, comforting chicken soup, which offers a moment of relief after the hike. Alongside the soup, they indulge in sake, a drink that Manager Jean finds exceptionally delightful. The taste of the sake encourages him to pour himself more, and he continues to sip it enthusiastically, savoring each drop. However, as they share this quiet moment, Se-ho experiences an internal struggle. Every time his gaze meets Manager Jin's face, a deep sense of frustration wells up inside him. The sight of his manager, coupled with the pressure of the situation, causes waves of irritation to ripple through Se-ho's mind. He begins to feel trapped in his own emotions, overwhelmed by the unspoken tension between them. Yet, in the midst of his growing anger, Se-ho chooses to swallow it down, suppressing the rage that threatens to surface. He clenches his fists internally and forces the bitterness into the depths of his throat, hoping that if he can hold it back just this once, the anger will eventually dissipate. Sean-ho tells himself that perhaps, if he can endure these moments of frustration, it will fade away from his heart in time, leaving him with a sense of peace he desperately craves. While Sean-ho is lost in his thoughts, still reflecting on his anger, Manager Jean suddenly interrupts his reverie, noticing that Seon-ho's glass is empty and that he's only eating his chicken. Manager Jean asks if Seon-ho feels like he isn't allowed to drink, suggesting that perhaps, due to his presence, Seon-ho has lost the mood to enjoy the sake. Surprised by this observation, Seon-ho quickly denies that it's the case. However, Manager Jean continues, noting that whenever Seon-ho is invited to dinner, he always finds an excuse to decline. If that doesn't work, Seon-ho tends to take half days off and disappears without a word. In response, Seon-ho suddenly drinks his sake in one gulp, thinking to himself that his manager is truly unfortunate. At that moment, Manager Jean notices that Seon-ho has left some sake in his glass and realizes that he may have unintentionally ruined Seon-ho's mood for drinking. Seon-ho, sensing the shift, casually explains that it wasn't intentional, finishing the remaining sake in his glass. Manager Jean, in a lighter tone, laughs and comments that he was just joking, thinking that perhaps Seon-ho doesn't have much of a sense of humor. Manager Jean picks up a piece of chicken thigh and Seon-ho, expecting it to be handed to him, thanks his manager in advance. However, his assumption proves wrong as Manager Jean eats the chicken thigh himself, leaving Seon-ho surprised. To his surprise, Manager Jean then offers him a piece of chicken neck as a special gift. Seon-ho, puzzled, wonders if this gesture might actually be a veiled threat to cut his career short. Suddenly, Manager Jean speaks, telling Seon-ho that he hopes he will have a long and safe career. He then adds that for the next round of full-time employee promotions, he has Seon-ho in mind personally. Seon-ho is taken aback, unable to believe what he's hearing, unsure if his manager is serious or not. In response, Seon-ho pours sake from the bottle and offers to pour some into Manager Jean's glass as a gesture of gratitude. Manager Jean remarks that this act of Seon-ho pouring the drink shows his enthusiasm, and in return, he pours sake into Seon-ho's glass as well, the two of them sharing this small moment of camaraderie. As the drinking continues, both Manager Jean and Seon-ho begin to feel the effects of the sake. The mood becomes more relaxed and Seon-ho, slightly intoxicated, speaks with a hint of sincerity in his voice. He tells Manager Jean that he has devoted his entire life to Jinseong Trading Company, acknowledging the weight of his commitment to the company. His words carry a sense of dedication, yet there's an underlying weariness as the alcohol loosens his tongue. Manager Jean, sensing the shift in the conversation, laughs and teasingly responds, asking if Seon-ho plans to make the company his final resting place. The remark, lighthearted and playful, catches Seon-ho off guard, and he laughs in return, appreciating the humor. Seon-ho, still amused by the joke, compliments Manager Jean for his wit, his tipsy state making the moment feel more carefree. The two share a light moment, their earlier tension forgotten as they bond over drinks and laughter. After some time, Manager Jean decides that from now on, Seon-ho must actively participate in company dinner events, just like the other employees. Seon-ho, still under the influence of the alcohol, agrees to this without hesitation. Both of them, now somewhat drunk, walk out of the pavilion, stumbling a bit along the way. Manager Jean, in a cheerful yet tipsy tone, says that he prefers people who are pleasant to be around rather than those who are just competent. He asks Seon-ho if he understands this sentiment. Seon-ho, with a light-hearted smile, responds that he understands, saying it in a joking manner. Before they know it, they find themselves at the cashier's desk, and the cashier asks them for payment. However, at that moment, Manager Jean suddenly bolts out, thanking Seon-ho for treating him to the promotion celebration. Seon-ho, confused, stands there for a moment and asks why Manager Jean isn't paying. He reminds Manager Jean that just last Friday, he had promised to treat him. Manager Jean responds that the treat was actually intended for the other employees who had been working hard outside the office. Seon-ho, taken aback by the response, tries to recall what Manager Jean had said earlier, now uncertain about the promise. This past Friday, Manager Jean informs Seon-ho that he and the other employees will head out to the field for work, meaning Seon-ho can't be the only one staying behind to rest. Manager Jean also remarks that having dinner with the team is just an extension of their work duties. With that, Manager Jean leaves with the team, leaving Seon-ho alone, and casually asks one of the employees about their dinner plans for the evening. The employee suggests they go to a Chinese restaurant, which is part of their efforts to support the success of a new product called Kajang, set to enter the Chinese market in the second semester. Manager Jean praises the idea, then invites the rest of the team to head to Kaohsiung that night. The employee who made the suggestion, however, grumbles to Sean-ho, expressing frustration about how long he will have to cater to the team's fervent dinner fans. He continues telling Sean-ho that if he doesn't have anyone to hang out with, he might as well go home and drink alone. As he speaks, the employee mutters a few curses under his breath, clearly irritated by the situation. At Pungak Mountain, the cashier presents their bill for 150,000 won. Sean-ho, frustrated, mutters under his breath, wondering if this is really what fieldwork means. Just then, Manager Jin's voice echoes from a distance thanking Sean-ho for paying the bill. This only fuels Sean-ho's anger, and he thinks to himself that this is exactly why he avoids the dinner team, even if it means using up valuable half-days off. While drinking and sitting in one of the pavilions, Manager Jean comments that the sake he is drinking tastes delicious. Meanwhile, under the influence of alcohol, Sean-ho's anger rises, and he feels the urge to do something that might be unforgivable. As he contemplates punching Manager Jean in the face, the word full-time seems to appear across Jin's face, intensifying Sean-ho's internal conflict. At that moment, Manager Jean asks if Sean-ho has finished paying the bill, and Sean-ho replies affirmatively. Sean-ho, still struggling with his emotions, thinks that he is on the brink of crossing a line. He tries to swallow his anger, reminding himself that his full-time position is almost within reach. Trying to stay calm, he reflects on how he has endured for 2 years, working to maintain his composure despite the mounting frustration. In the midst of his anger, a sudden cold wind hits, accompanied by thickening fog, making Sean-ho shiver with the chill. Manager Jean, seemingly unaware of the weather, suddenly begins running, declaring that he wants to get more sake. Sean-ho calls after him, urging him to return because the weather is strange. But Manager Jean continues to run, rambling about the second round and sharing the sake evenly. The fog grows thicker, blurring Sean-ho's vision, and in the stillness Manager Jean disappears from sight. Sean-ho is left wondering what is happening and why everything seems to have taken a sudden turn. He keeps running, trying to catch up with Manager Jean, but the fog grows so dense that he can no longer see anything. Panting heavily, he thinks about how much time has passed in the thick mist. No matter how far he runs or walks, he feels like he's getting nowhere. Suddenly, he trips over a tree root and falls. As he lies there, he thinks to himself that he doesn't want to die like this because there is still so much he has to do. Amidst the thickening fog, Sean-ho suddenly notices a dark figure in the distance. As he approaches, the figure becomes clearer, revealing a house with its door wide open. He enters the house, lying down inside to seek refuge. Inside, he spots a photo of a deity and several jars, leading him to assume the place is a shrine. Feeling the cold, he grabs a cloth that is covering a table with a large jar placed on it and wraps it around himself for warmth. While lying there, Sean-ho thinks that if he can hold on, maybe rescuers will find him, and he will eventually realize his dream of becoming a full-time employee. He envisions that securing a full-time position will bring him a secure life, without the constant fear of his contract being ended. It is a life that is completely different from the one his father lived. Sean-ho notices the jar falling after he pulls the cloth from the table. He wonders if the contents of the jar are alcohol that could help warm him up. He thinks that drinking it might help his body endure. It seems like a better option than doing nothing and freezing to death. However, he still hesitates, questioning whether it's okay to drink the liquid inside the jar. He decides to ignore his doubts and drinks the alcohol in one go. As he swallows, he experiences a sensation he has never felt before, making him wonder what kind of liquor it is. Soon after, he feels an unbearable pain in his chest. It feels as though his chest is burning, and the pain intensifies. Overcome by the agony, Sean-ho screams and then collapses into unconsciousness. Sean-ho falls into a deep sleep and begins to dream. In this dream, he sees a group of individuals, each holding a sword in their hands. Their faces are obscured by scarves, making it difficult to discern any features. Among them, one figure stands out, an individual holding a large jar filled with alcohol. This person drinks from the jar, consuming the alcohol quickly and soon becoming completely intoxicated. As the drunken figure stumbles, the group of sword-wielding individuals attacks him, but in an instant, the drunken person manages to evade the strike with remarkable agility. To everyone's surprise, the drunken person rises into the air, defying gravity. From this elevated position, he retaliates against the sword wielders by breathing out fire, a burst of flames shooting from his mouth. The fire engulfs the sword wielders, causing them to burn. The scene is chaotic, with the air thick with smoke and the sound of crackling flames filling the dream world. Seon-ho wakes up in a hospital room, feeling incredibly disoriented. His face is covered with a thick beard and mustache, and his hair has grown long, making him look unrecognizable. As his senses slowly return, a strong wave of dizziness hits him, making it difficult for him to focus. He wonders how he ended up in the hospital. Was he rescued by the emergency team, or had something else happened that led him here? When he tries to stand up, he feels incredibly unsteady, as though his body is not responding properly. His balance wavers, and he almost falls backward, narrowly avoiding a complete collapse. His mind races as he questions what he did before losing consciousness and what is happening to his body. A deep sense of unease builds within him as he struggles to recall the events leading up to this moment. Feeling suddenly nauseous, he hurries toward the bathroom, hoping to relieve the overwhelming discomfort. As he reaches for the bathroom door and pulls it open, to his surprise, the door immediately shatters, falling apart as if it couldn't withstand his touch. He stands there, stunned and confused, unable to comprehend what just happened. Why did the door break so easily, and what's going on with him? Seon-ho stands still, his heart pounding in his chest. He looks at his hands and then around the room, but nothing makes sense. He continues to question what has changed in his body, why he's feeling this way, and why he seems to be capable of things beyond his control. Something is definitely wrong, but he can't quite figure out what it is.